All right. Good morning, April. Thanks so much for being on here and chatting with us today.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
for the audience, April is the founder of Driven Outcomes. It's her company, but in more important to this conversation today, she's actually started the generosity culture movement, and we're going to be talking a bit today about generosity and how generosity can actually come into play when it comes to getting yourself comfortable on camera, but more importantly, getting yourself inspired to do things that scare you, right? Which, of course, for a lot of our viewers is going to be getting on camera.
Right.
So, first thing I'm curious about, April, I've heard you talk about generosity, and I'm very much in alignment with you on the power of generosity, but I didn't exactly go start a movement about it. What is it that made you start a movement about the generosity culture?
So it's taken a long time. The impetus for it actually happened when I was 9 years old. And there was a senior executive, the head of HR at the company where my mother had worked. And my mom was sent to rehab because of an alcohol problem. And this person came to our house, told us in a really kind way, and just took an interest in me and offered me support and mentoring and things that at that point in my life changed the entire trajectory of my life, which was amazing.
Interesting.
And I found that I wanted to be her for someone. So this idea of just giving for the sake of giving was really formative for me. And as I got older, I used it more and more in business. And what was funny is after I started my company 3 years ago, I realized that when I was going in and I accelerate businesses. So I turn around businesses that are failing. I help businesses that just really want to scale and grow. What I realized was I was teaching them to do that. I was teaching them to give value first. So the generosity culture is based on the idea that you invest in and give value to your employees, your clients, and your community. And what happens when you do that, which you're giving just to give, but you can't do it without having tremendous success, which is this great dichotomy. You give a lot, but then you get a lot. And it seems counterintuitive, but it is just this amazing way to develop your business and your life.
That's so interesting. So, you've believed this strongly
Mhm.
since you were 9 years old,
Yes.
right? Um, and you noticed that a lot of this was coming up in the consulting work you're doing. What were some of the first steps you took when you decided, you know what, I want to try to make this more than just my belief set. I want to create a movement that other people can buy and identify with. What are the first
Mhm.
steps to even making that happen? Literally, I don't even know how I would start if I wanted to do something like that.
Well, it was a little more organic than that. I'd like to say I had the idea and I was very good about it, but it kind of just happened.
Interesting.
So I was doing it with businesses, and I also do keynote speaking. I worked with an amazing company called Video Narrative out of Oregon. And in talking to them about making some videos to highlight the speaking that I do, it was in explaining to them my work that this came about. We were bantering back and forth, and I was like, well, it's all about generosity, it's all about giving. And legitimately, he said, oh, it's like a whole culture of generosity. And I was like, totally, it's a generosity culture. And literally, it existed for years, and then it got a name. And
Interesting.
that's when it really started to blow up, if you will.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. All right. So here's something that I'm really curious about, and I want to spend some
Mm-hmm.
time dwelling on here.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard other people talk about how when they were getting started with the thing that scared them, whether that was
Mm-hmm.
starting a YouTube channel, starting their own business, putting video content out, one of the things that they did that helped them was they tried to think less about themselves and try to focus mostly on the people they were helping and the people they were
Yes.
serving.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between generosity
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, is courage the right word?
Bravery, courage, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. What kind of connection do you see there?
I see a huge connection. So when you think about it, when you're focused on others, when you're outwardly focused in the sense of I want to help you, I want to do this for this person, I want to be of value, you don't have that same inner chatter, which is why would you do this? Are you good enough? Are you whatever? Because your focus is I want to be of service. I want to help this person. So it can all but eliminate the fear because you are so focused on helping someone that is the goal. And if you think about it, like think about parents with children, or even if you're not a parent, if you're just around children, when you're teaching a child to do something that they don't know how to do, you don't question if you're good enough to teach them. You're just excited to help them and you get joy out of what they're doing and accomplishing. So fear doesn't really have a place in that environment. And I know you work with a lot of folks doing videos, and I'm sure they're like, oh, well, I don't know if what I have to say is important enough. But what's
Yeah.
interesting is the thoughts that we have in our own head, we take for granted. I'm pretty sure Einstein was not impressed with anything he had to say because it was his inner chatter. It was just him. And what people fail to see, and I talk to clients about this all the time, is what you take for granted as a regular thought is genius to someone else and could change their life. So if you share that with them, it can be amazingly impactful. And that can help people get away from the fear, because if someone really needed your help and needed something that you could offer, you'd give it to them, right?
Yeah.
And then you can step away from that. Well, what if it's not lit well? And what if I don't look good on camera? Nobody thinks they look good on camera. Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So it's the it's the generosity mindset that helps. You talked there about something interesting too, which
Mhm.
was that, even the most mundane thoughts in your own mind can be interesting to someone else. And I would
Sure.
certainly agree with that. Playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, though, I'd say not every mundane thought in your mind is interesting to someone else. How can you tell which of the thoughts that seem boring to you are interesting to the rest of the world?
So, two things. Number one, I would disagree. And I would say every mundane thought you have is interesting to someone. Maybe not the general public, but to somebody it is. But to your point, if you want to get the ones out there that make the most sense, think of the things that your friends ask you for advice about. Think of the things that people come to you for help on that you just take for granted. Those are the things that the majority of people would love to hear from you. And we all have stuff like that, all of us. For some people, it's, can you tell me how to cook this? Because they're known to be such a great cook. Right? For me, it was always business stuff. Hey, April, let me get your take on this. And nobody was asking me to cook them stuff. Nobody.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So this is something that came up in a conversation I had a while back. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something to the
Mm-hmm.
effect of you can tell what areas of your life you have the potential for real, natural genius in
Mm-hmm.
based on the things that people seem impressed by that seem
Mm-hmm.
unimpressive to you. Like if there's a mismatch there where the rest of the world thinks
Beautiful.
it's impressive and you think it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing at all, that's your
Mm-hmm.
zone of genius. That's your natural bent. Do you
Okay,
agree with that?
you just said that so much better than me, 100%. I may actually have to, the next time someone asks me, I may need to answer the way you just did. Yes. And it's funny in a one-on-one environment with CEOs and folks that I work with. That's when I'll go, oh man, that's amazing. They're like, no, it's just no, you don't understand. That is amazing. And that's when we'll have that conversation. And you just said it so succinctly. Yes.
Cool. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. I think that was something, like I said, I had a conversation that was kicking around in my
Mhm.
mind, but I wasn't quite sure if that was good. So I appreciate you validating that. So I'll
It was
keep that in
better
mind
than
for
good.
myself.
It was amazing. So I'll just tell you, that is your area of genius.
All right. See, there we go. I guess finding complex thoughts and wording them succinctly must be my area of genius because that seemed like
There
no,
you
no
go.
big deal to me. All right. All right. So we know that, a generosity mindset helps you work past some of your own, personal hangups and be
Right?
more bold and courageous.
Mhm.
But I don't think that's just a switch that you can flip, right? Because unfortunately, the self-preservation mode that makes us scared to put ourselves out there is a
Mhm.
deeply wired human condition, and it's
Right.
powerful and it's strong, and it doesn't necessarily
Mhm.
listen to reason when you have fears coming up. So when
Right.
you're feeling the fear coming up of, oh God, the anxiety, the pressure, the what do people think? Um, any tips for how to force yourself into a generosity mindset when you're not necessarily leaning that way in this moment naturally?
So I will tell you, and this is different for everyone, but that self-preservation you talked about, which is really our ego, right? And it's there to protect us from getting eaten by bears and falling off cliffs. And it tends to react as if there's a bear or a cliff we're going to fall off of, even when the challenge doesn't require a life or death kind of fear.
Yeah.
So the thing that I would tell people is this, is that think about all of the things that you were super afraid of. And then think about what happened after. Because I will tell you, and I've been afraid of a lot of things. I was afraid of going through basic training in the military. I was afraid of going into war zones, like legitimate things to be afraid of. But even with those, the experience was never as scary or bad. as the fear leading up to it. So I would tell everyone, and this is harder for some than others, but you just go anyway. Most people who seem brave were not brave until after the fact. They just did it. And there are things that I've done that people are like, that was so brave. And I have said, actually, it was stupid. It only became brave once it worked out. Right? And
Yeah.
again, that focus of, could I help someone? Could I be an example to someone? Because people don't actually listen to what we say, people watch what we do. And so going through and facing your fears and doing things that are scary is really important. And you never get past that fear. You're always fearful. I shared with some folks recently in an article. I said, I still get scared. I was afraid to do something. I was afraid to do a group event with a bunch of people because I was like, oh, what if I can't offer that same level of, experience? I can't teach them as much. I can't do it as well. When I realized I was having that thought process, I scheduled an event. I was like, oh no, just do it. And it will be whatever it is, but what you're feeling right now is so much worse than if you even did it and no one learned anything, which isn't what happened. But that's what your ego and fear can do in your mind.
So now my next question, now that I heard you say that, is, it's the idea that you're scared to do it. You're
Mm-hmm.
thinking of all these terrible things that could happen, and you just do
Mm-hmm.
it anyway. But
Right?
surely there must be some point where these crazy, wild, harebrained ideas that come into your head are dangerous enough, overly ambitious to the point where you shouldn't jump right in, right? Where it is actually the voice of reason. I guess the first question is, do you think there is a point where your brain cooks up ideas that are just a little bit too ambitious and crazy for now, and you should probably put on the back burner and wait? Or do you think every idea that pops into your head should be pursued valiantly?
I think that we should have a group of people, whether it's one or two or even larger, four or five people that we trust and know love us, who will give us a great sounding board for those ideas and tell us what they think. And it's important that they love you because someone who loves you will tell you when you're having a harebrained idea.
Right.
Someone who doesn't love you will let you run with it, right? And we all have people like that in our life that we trust who want our success more than anything. And that's a great person to bounce those ideas off of. Because what you'll also find is what you may think is too out there and too crazy, someone else will be like, you have to do this
Interesting.
because they see the potential in you far more than you do.
Yeah. All right. Next question. When you're going into taking these bold steps, doing the things that scare you, do you suggest, if you're really having a hard time with it, that you identify some pretty small first steps to take at first, or do you just jump right in and do the thing that scares you?
We
Analogy would be, do you peel the band-aid off in one go, or do you
Right?
do little tugs on it?
Right. So that depends on the person. We're all different. I am a rip the band aid off person every day, all day. And it has always worked out for me. But if I shared with you anecdotal stories, you'd think she's crazy. For some people, the little steps are the way that they operate best. You know who you are. You know how you can get the band-aid off. Some of the people inch through the pain and that's just how they can handle it. Some people rip it off. So this is where you need to know yourself. And sometimes, again, that's going to that small group of people that you trust that will tell you the truth. Oh yeah, you're not a jump into the pool kind of person. Ever since you were little, you walked step by step by step. And you should honor what works best for you.
Um, One thought I had, when I came across you in the generosity movement, is I actually asked myself, am I living a generous life? And am I
Mhm.
living as generously as I could? Now, of
Right?
course, we all generally think we're good people, but I also
Of
guarantee every
course.
one of us could be more generous than we are.
Mhm.
Is there any sort of like, I don't know, self-reflection exercises or even like physical
Hmm.
identifiers to look for to tell if you're really living a generous life or not? Like, what does that look like? How do I know if I'm doing that or not?
So the three things that I love is to tell people, are you investing in your employees, your clients, and your community? And if you don't have employees, your children, your family, your friends, right? And when I say invest, people tend to go straight to the monetary. But really, the best investing that we do is with our time and our effort. And are you making an impact in those areas? Because That's where generosity matters the most. And so if I take it in a business perspective, if I invest in my employees, I'm halfway there to investing in my clients, because the way I treat them, they're going to turn around and treat the people that we serve. I'm modeling it for them, they're experiencing it, and it becomes part of who they are. Again, for the community, we all want to assume that the people who are working with us and for us are living their dream, but some of them aren't. This is a job. It just is. So how can I give them bigger meaning and bigger purpose? Well, by giving them a way to invest in the community, because in a lot of cases, and there have been numerous studies done on this, that's where people get their sense of purpose, from their work. So if they're doing a job that is not as purposeful, but they know that their company gives back to the community they're in, whether it's local or global or whatever it is, then they're getting that great sense of purpose. So I would always take it to those three things. And again, if you're not a business, employees, I would change that to friends and family. Then I would say clients, because no matter what you do, you have someone you serve. They may be internal folks in your business, etc. And then when you broaden that and you give back to others, what's so interesting is there is a humongous intangible benefit that I cannot explain to someone until they do it. And they find in the beginning, and there are some businesses I've worked with, they're going to give because they know they're going to get. And it only starts out that way. And then they're like, oh my gosh, it feels so good just to give, just to be generous. And the moment that happens, that's when the trajectory goes in their business, because then you're not tied to the outcome of what will I get back. You're giving value just because it feels right. And then you're open to receiving the value that just naturally comes back.
Yeah. So I think, we all would kind of know and agree that if the only reason you're being generous is because you have an immediate expectation of immediate return from that individual and you're keeping score, waiting for them to return the favor, that's not real
Right.
generosity.
No, not at
Um,
all.
but would you say that if you're being generous as a lifestyle, because
Mhm.
you know and anticipate that over the long course from somebody, it's going to benefit you back, is that tainting the generosity or is that still full generosity?
No, I think that is just recognizing, and there's a better way to put this, but the circle of life. That's just how life works. When
Right,
you put good out there, good just comes back. And when you trust that it will, but don't micromanage how,
right.
it just does. And it's amazing. I mean, in the current environment that we have right now, where everyone's focused on all the negative, the thing that I focus on is look at the amazing things people are doing for each other.
Yeah,
Look at the amazing things companies are doing for their employees, companies that I never would expect that are getting no revenue, that are like, well, you're not here, we're going to pay you. We want to take care of you. That will come back to them. They have no idea when, right? But for example, every time I hear about it, I write that retailer down. If I don't shop there, I will now,
that's
because I believe in the way they're taking care of their people. That's how it works. You do the right thing just to do the right thing, but people take notice and then they want to be a part of your environment, your circle, your business.
yeah, I like that. So I got some questions about generosity, things that have been kicking around in my head for the last few weeks that I'd love your thoughts on.
Oh gosh, two
So,
whole. I'm ready.
so, how do you get better at spotting opportunities for generosity? I think most of us, we're forced in a situation where it's just us and someone who needs help desperately in a closed room, we're going to act. But the truth is, generally, the people who need help, it's not quite as obvious as that. And
Okay.
even if it's obvious they need help, it's not obvious that we're the person to do it. So, how do you get better at going through life and spotting those opportunities? Because I think most of us are just focused on us and our tasks. We
Mm-hmm.
miss lots of opportunities for generosity.
That's a great question. You have such insightful, fantastic questions. So you always get more of what you focus on, no matter what it is. So if you focus on wanting to be more generous, things will just show up. And I'll give you an example. If you've ever bought a new car, whatever it was, and then all of a sudden you see so many of them on the road and you'd never seen that car before, you didn't think you did, right? But you've told your mind by purchasing this car, this is important. Like literally your subconscious mind, you have told this is important, and it starts pointing them out to you and you see them everywhere. Generosity is the same way. You tell yourself, I want to help. And you don't even have to call it generosity or what. I want to help. Opportunities for you to help will pop up all the time. And keep in mind, they can be really small. They can be smiling at someone on the street, because not everybody does that. And you can change someone's day by smiling and saying hello. It can be opening the door for someone. It could be letting someone go in front of you in line or letting them out in traffic. These are all acts of generosity. It can be giving someone the benefit of the doubt when they act terribly, that they must be having a really bad day. That doesn't have anything to do with you. And you hope that their day gets better. They can be that small. And I think that one of the things that can seem overwhelming about generosity is it seems like it all has to be a grand gesture. It doesn't. Some of the smallest acts of kindness and generosity are the ones that are the most impactful to the people around us.
Yeah, I definitely actually can agree with that. So I had something similar that I went through end of last year. End of last year, I read a book called A Giftology by John
Mm-hmm.
Ruhlin. Phenomenal book.
Uh-huh.
And ever since reading it, I can't stop noticing opportunities where I could send somebody a thoughtful gift. And
Oh, I
like
love it.
just keeps, and I have been the world's worst gift giver for my entire life.
Uh-huh.
But now I'll just be reading, through LinkedIn posts and see different things, people posting about things that are happening in their lives, and suddenly ideas pop in my mind of, oh, it'd be really meaningful right now, some kind of gift for her new office that she just moved into.
Oh,
And
I
these
love
ideas
that.
just keep popping up. So you're right, it is very much that same, I think in psychology terms, it's called the reticular activating system. It's the part of your brain that filters out what's important and what's not important. And
Yes.
it spots opportunities that you've trained it to look for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I would totally agree with that. That if you just focus on it for, even just like a week or two of intentional
Mm-hmm.
focus on looking for generosity,
Mm-hmm.
after that you will have retrained your brain to look for those things more often.
Another thing which is really amazing is as you focus on generosity, as you focus on helping people, you can't help but see things through that lens. And that lens is much more positive. So today, like in the current environment we are in, when people are really in a panic about what's going to happen with the economy, what's going to happen financially, my job, this and that. And then you have renowned investors like Warren Buffett who say, this is actually an amazing opportunity. This is a great place to invest in stocks that are down from companies you trust and know are wonderful. So if you buy them now, in a year, you will have done very well, right? If you can get out of that afraid mindset and see it as an opportunity. So any negative situation is actually an opportunity to help someone, to learn something, to grow. And if you can look at it through that lens, then there are no negative situations. There are just situations. And that's powerful.
I think I want to get that printed up in fancy typeface and slapped on the wall of my homes. There are no negative situations, just situations. Because I think you're
Absolutely.
right. Everything that happens in the world has an upside and a downside, right?
Oh,
Sometimes,
yeah.
it's different proportions, but
Mhm.
it all exists. The trick of a life is learning how to totally maximize the upside that comes your way and minimize the
Mhm.
downside that comes your way. And
Absolutely.
that's it.
Well, and it's mostly in your own mind. And there's a famous quote, and I can't think of who to attribute it to. And honestly, it could be Yoda, but it's not good or bad. It just is. We make it good or bad with our own thought process.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right. Now, another question I got about generosity.
Okay.
And this one might not come off clearly at first, so if you want to clarify, I can. But what effect does social pressure have on being generous?
To the good or to the bad?
Could be either. The lens I was looking at it through is I think sometimes people have the opportunity to be generous, but
Mm-hmm.
when they're surrounded by people and they don't know what they should be doing, they just choose to do nothing because they're too awkward to step out and be generous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So yeah, the social pressure. I think there's been a lot of different studies and examples noting that when someone needs help and you're the only person there, you help them. But when someone needs help and there's a ton of people around, you don't help them. Part of that is because there's this whole human thing of, well, someone
Group
else will
thing.
do it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
part of it also is a matter of you don't know what's appropriate and should you help, and you don't want to be that awkward person who does something that's inappropriate and not like the right step for the time, so you just do nothing because you're afraid that people think you're weird or something like that. Do you see social pressure
Interesting.
having any sort of effect on people expressing generosity?
I think it has effect on people who aren't self-confident, because if you were to put me in a situation where I would need to help people, I wouldn't care what anyone thought. Why? I know what's right personally, so I'm going to go with that. And the fact of the matter is that everyone is never going to agree with what you're doing. It's never going to happen. So I personally am a fan of being polarizing, because if there are people that love me and people that hate me, I know I'm standing for something. And since I'm standing for something that I believe in, that's wonderful. If people can kind of take you or leave you, you're not really doing anything. You're not living, you're not expressing yourself. So, do I think it can happen? Sure. But I don't think it can happen to people who are confident in who they are and their own beliefs.
I can see that. Yeah. Um, and then again, playing devil's advocate a bit here, do you
Mm-hmm.
think there's ever instances where you can reach out being generous and someone might get maybe offended by it because they think it's some kind of charity or sympathy and their pride is wounded by the fact that you're trying to be generous with them? Is that a thing
So,
you have to be aware of?
I don't think you have to be aware of it. I think you have to be aware of this simple fact: people's reactions to anything that is out of the ordinary has nothing to do with you, right? If you do something kind for someone and they snap at you, that's something they're going through. That really, and it's interesting. I say this, and it's such a simple concept, but it is so hard for people to grasp that we are all very selfish in nature, not in a bad way, just in a we are self absorbed. Our
Sure.
world is our world, right? And for people who are so self absorbed, we have a very hard time understanding that everything everyone else does isn't about us, right? Just like what we do isn't necessarily about other people. So can it happen? Absolutely. But when it, again, and it kind of goes back to that self-confidence thing, when your intent is to help, someone saying, no, thank you, I don't want your help, even if they don't say it that nicely, isn't offensive. I'm just glad I had the opportunity to offer it to you. And I'm fine with that. And again, it's removing yourself from it. Now, I will tell you that from a sales perspective, because I also teach people how to sell within the generosity culture. And a lot of people are so afraid of being told no, of being rejected, of being just losing, if you will, this sale. When you look at selling as helping someone and offering help, if they say no, they said no to the help. They didn't say no to you. And that never really bothers you, right? Let's say someone's carrying a ton of packages and you're like, I don't know how you're going to make it in the door. Hey, do you need help with that? And they're like, no, I got it. And you're like, okay, doesn't matter at all. You're happy you offered to help. You wish them the best of luck with making it in with all of those packages. If they happen to drop them after they said they didn't need your help, you'll probably still run over there and help them and be glad you did.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there's an expression that I've always kept in mind for my own
Mhm.
life, which I think applies to what you just shared there too. So the expression is the way you treat people is a reflection of who you are, not of who they are. Right.
Yes.
So treating people with respect has nothing to do with who they are and whether or not they deserve their respect, has everything to do with who
Mhm.
you are and whether or
Yeah,
not you're that type of person. But I think by
sure.
extension, if you flip that onto other people, it means the way other people treat you is a reflection of who they are, not of who you are.
Mhm.
So if you get, angriness and cold-heartedness and rejection from people, it has nothing to do with you. It's
And
just them
I,
expressing who they are.
I'd take it a step further. It is not a reflection of who they are, it's a reflection of who they think they are. Because when you think about it, the people who are the meanest to others have usually had something very terrible happen to them. Hurt people, right? You've heard
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So I believe everyone is basically good. And I believe that everyone has the potential to be something amazing. But when they're stuck in that place where they think they're not, that's when they lash out at other people. I don't think that changes who they are. Like if you've ever seen that demonstration of a dollar, right? And you crumple it up and you spit on it and you tear it up a little, it's still a dollar. It's still worth a dollar.
Yep.
Same thing with people. No matter what's happened to them and how they act or appear because of it, that doesn't mean they're not worthy. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I guess as a closing question here, for yourself personally, can you just talk about the effects that generosity has had on your life, both personally and professionally?
Absolutely. So, as I told you earlier in my story about Sue Harper, who took an interest in me when I was a child, she changed the trajectory of my life because I came from a place where people didn't graduate high school, people didn't have anything. And here was this very successful, very amazing woman who told me I could do all those things. So, at a very young age, I was instilled this level of confidence because I was like, well, that smart lady says I can, and I believe her. And that belief had me joining the military, had me getting multiple degrees, had me going after opportunities that I had no business going after probably at the time, but it worked out. And so personally, that generosity from her led me to do all of these things personally, but then pay it forward. So because of her, there are children's charities that have benefited from that original generosity she gave me around the world that I've worked with when I traveled in the military and after. From a business perspective, I have been able to, whether it was in my corporate career or when I started my own company, show people how giving to their clients and investing in them can change not only that one relationship, but the entire culture of the company. And that has had amazing financial ramifications. Generated over $1 billion in additional revenue for all of those different people I've worked with. And that's from giving and investing. So it's had a tremendous impact on my personal life and on my business. And I think you can tell this by talking to me. I'm really happy. And that comes from giving to and investing in others. It's not a fluke that helping other people be successful leaves you this happy.
Cool. Well, thanks a ton for your time, April. I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of people after listening to this are going to want to connect with you, connect with, and plug into the generosity culture. So, what are the best ways for people to get in contact with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I am the only April Shprintz in the United States. I'm pretty easy to find. And my website is just drivenoutcomes.com. You have some ways that you can contact me through there.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. This was great. I love your take on things.
Awesome. Well, thanks.